I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, the day after, as the Jewish community is now coming to grips with the fact that the President of the United States has secured enough votes in the United States Senate to guarantee that if he is forced to veto a congressional vote against the Iran nuclear accord, the President's veto will be sustained. Most people are not surprised. But after weeks of trying to convince Democrats in Congress to vote against the Iran deal, the fight seems to be over. In fact, last night, AIPAC sent out an email letter signed by AIPAC President Robert Cohen, acknowledging that President Obama has the votes necessary to sustain a veto and asking AIPAC members to shift their emphasis, and if they are lobbying Congress, those efforts should now be to ask Congress to improve the Iran deal. AIPAC writes, many members of Congress are still undecided. We must continue to engage them and make our case. We must press our elected officials to insist on a better deal until every vote is cast. Well, where does the Jewish world, and really all those who have been opposing the Iran deal because they believe it puts the world at risk, especially the state of Israel, what do we do now? For some answers, I'm so pleased to be joined on our JBS phones from Israel by the National Director Emeritus of the Anti-Defamation League, Abe Foxman. Abe, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you again.
Abe, where are you right now in Israel as we speak?
Actually, on a car. I'm not driving. Stuck in Thursday night traffic. Thursday night is a very heavy traffic night for Arab Yom Shishi after Friday. And I'm between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, having just left a Arab Rosh Hashanah party at the American ambassador's home in Herzliya. In Israel, there is this tradition of parties, Arab Rosh Hashanah, lahavdol to our Christmas parties.
Yes.
And so, various ministries, factories, corporations, and here including the American ambassador to Israel, inviting people for a l'chaim and to wish each other a Shana Tova.
Well, that's
very
lovely.
Nice tradition.
Lovely.
Even, the prime minister, the president goes to various institutions. So, I'm very lucky to be part of it.
Well, we are thrilled you are. By the way, were there other American Jewish leaders at Herzliya, this Erev Rosh Hashanah party?
I'm sure they are. I know that the American Jewish Committee with David Harris with a small delegation was in Israel. I think they're leaving tonight.
Yes.
There were a couple of hundred people on the lawn, so I didn't go looking, but I'm sure they were there.
Okay. The reason I ask is I wondered whether anybody you were with at this party, was there any discussion of the developments now in America where the president has secured enough votes to sustain a veto that he might have to use if, in fact, there is a congressional vote against the Iran nuclear accord? In general, what's the mood you've experienced right now in the Jewish world, as I call it, the day after?
Well, Mark, I'll give you my view, and then I'll tell you what I hear.
Please.
My view is that the president didn't win and we didn't lose. That, in fact, it's what I would call teiku. It's a stalemate. I think both sides achieved partially what they were looking for without a total victory or defeat, in the sense that, did the president win? How do you measure a win when 2/3 of the Congress are rejecting, his foreign policy initiative, short of a couple of votes, which will give him the ability to move forward. So it's not a win from the Jewish community's perspective. That's a pretty hefty showing. So you ask, what about the day after? I think the day after, it's very important that neither party crows or overdoes, we beat him or they say we beat them. I think the tone of how we look at it, I think we should look at it soberly. I think we should appreciate that both sides were very serious about this struggle, and that at the end of the day, I think it's a stalemate, and now we need to look the day ahead. Now, if you ask me the other question, what do I hear? What I hear is it depends where you come from. That is, I hear voices that the relationship has been destroyed, the Jewish community is in turmoil. And so if you're somebody who doesn't like Bibi, doesn't like his approach, doesn't like where he stood, so now you're a prophet of doom and gloom that our relationships are destroyed, etc. If you're on the other side and you don't like what Obama is doing, then, you blame Obama and this will destroy the relationship. I believe in truth is our community, this is the first time that I know, Mark, in the history of that I know Jewish American-Israeli relations, this is the first time the Jewish community has been tested. Because this was the first time that what was perceived to be the national security interests of both our countries were at odds. And yet, with all these people who say the community in turmoil, you know what? The national Jewish organizations, the establishment stood together. The Amcha, the membership did not go in revolt. So take a look at the federations who voted against it. In some cities, the vote was 3-2, but the minority didn't issue its own statements of unhappiness. Mm-hmm. In the federations where they didn't vote against, they didn't vote for. So the community, in a very sober way, looked at it and addressed it, and I think we've all come out stronger. Last comment, AIPAC. A lot of people, again, prophets of doom and gloom, AIPAC will be hurt. The truth is, no, it won't, because in the day after, I'm talking the day after, really, after September 16th, the debates and discussions, those members of Congress who voted with the president will try every which way to work with AIPAC so that the Jewish community, its institutions, will support them for the re-elections. Those on the Republican side who voted against it will come and say, look, I've stood with you, now I need the support and the reward. So that, I do not see the damage, the destructive force. I think when history is written, I think the Jewish community stood in solidarity with Israel, even though at times it was difficult. Finally, to say to you, if we had to do it over again, listen, the Prime Minister of Israel, he goes to sleep and he gets up in the morning worried with the responsibility for Israel's safety and security. I don't second-guess him on his decision to take this battle, to take it all the way. In retrospect, if we had to do anything over again, I said that coming to Congress at that time was ill-advised. I think that was the one mistake or misstep that in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. I think that added a dimension of anger, of hurt, of lack of protocol. But if you take that away, this is and was what we're all about. We disagree with respect. There was some ugliness, but it's in the extremes. On the whole, Israel treated the president's disagreement respectfully. The president, in his more recent comments, has tried to reach out, whether it was to the forward, whether it was to the webcast, whether it was a meeting with Jews, saying, okay, now let's move forward. And I think now we have to stand together to move forward.
It is wonderful to hear a balanced response, Abe. I am very, very grateful. I know that there will be people on either side of the issue who will feel that you are you are being too idealistic. Maybe they would say it's too Pollyanna, that in fact there has been a lot of discord that's been very ugly in the rhetoric that's used. There are many people, Abe, who are very upset that the president seems to have said the world was basically for my deal except for the 1% that was American Jewry in the state of Israel. And that there's a...
Oh, but he's backed off that, Mark. First of all, the ugliness was at the fringes.
Yeah.
We're living in an era today where the extremes make the news.
Yes.
It doesn't take very much for it. Now, and the president, I think, you know what, his effort to reach out in the last couple of weeks, as I indicated, whether it was to the Jewish press, whether it was with the Jewish community, whether it was in a webcast, and he walked back some of the things. I think the most important statement from the president and now John Kerry was publicly to say that they both recognize why Israel felt so strong, feels so strong, is so concerned, is so anxious. It wasn't there in the beginning. It wasn't there in the beginning. It was, I'm right and you're wrong. Both sides have traveled a long way. And the recognition, the public recognition that the prime minister's concern and anxiety and Israel's concern about Iran, the neighborhood, what they're doing outside the circle of the nuclear is something that he understands and will need to be protected. You know, that's the step that we're going from. I think now the tone has to be, you know, we'll hear what the prime minister says, how he addresses it, but here's the opportunity to begin to build. The reality is, this is what it is, and again I say, the White House didn't win and we didn't lose, and vice versa. One shouldn't see it in those terms.
I understand.
The battle was fought. This is the reality.
Okay. From your, you know, you've heard many Jews say, and this isn't so much on the fringe. The fringe has to do with the tone of the argument. But there is a serious swath of American Jewry and Israeli Jewry which fears that this deal will in fact pave the way for Iran's getting a nuclear weapon and that it is a disaster. Abe, from your perspective, is this deal a disaster? Is the fact that it's going to become part of American foreign policy now in a formal way, is that a disaster from your perspective?
Look, I spoke against and I advocated against. I think that the deal is a mistake. I think the deal, you're dealing with a country which has a history and a record of cheating, a country which was proud of the last time that it cheated. It troubled me that our country, in an effort to prevent another war, set up red lines and crossed every red line, all in an effort to invest in a hope of a peaceful. We don't know whether it's a disaster, Mark. Only time will tell. Mm-hmm. Only time will tell. And I think to make sure that it's not a disaster, what troubles me more now is that there are no consequences. There is nothing that I'm aware of in this deal which says to the Iranians, if you violate X, this is what happens.
Yes.
If you violate Y, this is what will happen. We're going to have this. We're going to have to debate it and discuss it. I think they need to know up front that what the price and what the consequence. And I think that's a major, lacuna lack of this agreement. Now, I have a way to fix it, but
how can you fix it?
It's not in my hands. I would fix it by setting consequences. And to me, the best consequence is if the United States of America would publicly declare that it is putting in the hands of the state of Israel the most sophisticated equipment and weapons, which are bunker busters, and the ability to deliver it. That will say to the Iranians, you know what? You know you're going to have to deal with us, but we're a little further away. We may come back with sanctions or not, but the people who really care, the people whose survival is at stake, we have put into their hands the ability to make consequences if you fail. I think if that happens, I can't speak for the Prime Minister. I would sleep better at night knowing that there's the ability in the hands of the Israelis, but more so, that the Iranians know they're not sure about America. They're not sure whether America would act militarily or won't. The president's statements throughout the last 2 years can be interpreted any way you want. And the Iranians look at red lines that have been crossed. So, while I don't question America's strength and power and its ability and its presence in the Middle East to be able to make a difference, I'm not sure that the Iranians are convinced that we will use it. And therefore, if they know that the Israelis have the ability, I think that's the best consequence and the best deterrent for the Iranians not to cheat.
Very, very well said. I assume then this is what you would encourage American Jews and Americans in general to lobby Congress for now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark, I think words are not enough. We welcome the words. The president's words are important because they're not only addressed to us, they're addressed to the Iranians, to the Middle East, to the world. But words alone, at this point, listen, we were told a lot of things along the negotiations, and things have changed. So I think one needs to take an insurance policy. And the insurance policy is to put in the hands of the people who are most threatened, the ability to respond if they believe it.
Yes.
And you know what? It doesn't have to be done alone. There are ways so that America and Israel can coordinate a response mechanism. But if the Iranians know that the Israelis have the ability to respond if they cheat on the nuclear issue, I think this agreement will have greater effect and greater effectiveness in bringing about a non-nuclear Iran.
I agree with you 100%. I want to ask you one question that I believe, given your experience, you can speak to far better than most. And I say this very humbly, almost quietly. The Jewish community made a big deal of this. In essence, they used a lot of their political capital and in terms of their rhetoric, a great deal of their attempt to persuade America that this was a dire situation, that the deal had to be, quote, killed, and that if it weren't, the threat that would exist, not simply for Israel, but for the world, would put our children and our grandchildren at risk. A great deal of political capital, Abe, was expended by the Jewish community over this issue, and AIPAC's call for American Jewry to pressure Congress, members of Congress, especially the Democratic members of Congress, to vote against the deal was in my mind, a conscious strategy. And I'm worried that in some way the fact that you say we didn't lose, but in one narrow sense we did. We asked Jews to mobilize to stop Congress from voting for this deal, and in the end, that effort was not successful. To what extent have we done any damage to the Jewish presence in America, to the Jewish sense of being influential? Maybe even, you should excuse the expression, Jewish power. To what extent have we, in some way, Abe, shot ourselves in the foot because we said it was the sky is falling, we lost, and now we have to say, well, the sky isn't exactly falling. What's your insight on this problem?
Mark, there are certain moments in history where, your rational approach doesn't apply. I don't think that we as a Jewish people, and I say following Israel here, this was an academic exercise or we'll sit down and we'll strategize. If we expend so much, will we get so much? I think historically, when the leadership of Israel, both the right and the left, believe that this is a serious existential threat, and that left and right, the majority believes it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal, and say we need to speak against it. So I don't, you're trying to put almost as a strategic exercise at the university how much you win. So number one is, I think this is a battle that the moment in history demanded that the Jewish people together take. So that's one. But even if you are to measure consequences on us, you know what? I say we haven't lost. To get 2/3 of Congress, minus a couple of senators or congressmen, to enable the president to move forward, that's a pretty sad victory. And you know what? I have a great deal of respect for the president. The fact that the president of the United States, to try to convince the Jewish community, had to go, with all due respect to the forward, he hasn't gone to the forward before, has to ask the Federation and the Conference of Presidents to address the Jewish community on a webcast to get equal time. The efforts expended, I don't think it fell on deaf ears. Look, when you look at America, most of America doesn't care. Most of America doesn't know where Iran is.
Yes.
Most of America is being entertained by Donald Trump.
Yes.
So, that's not who we were talking to.
Yes.
We were talking to the opinion holders. We were talking to those who vote on political decisions. And again, the president barely got his way. And the message is still, there are polls, and you can buy your polls, and you can requisition your polls. I think people who know are split. It's not a very easy decision one way or the other. And then finally, Mark, the strongest, most successful lobbyist in the world is the President of the United States. And even with a heavily Republican Congress, it's very difficult to defeat a sitting president who says, this is the essence of my legacy as president.
Yes.
This is the most important. So, you know what? In light of that, to end up where we ended up, I'm okay. I'm okay with it.
Okay. By the way, you act as if you expect the vote in terms of the majority of Congress. When the vote comes on the 16th, you expect the vote to go against this deal. Do I understand you correctly?
Yeah.
You'll be surprised if the president doesn't win a simple majority vote. That'll surprise you.
I will be surprised.
Okay.
But, again, the president is the president.
Okay.
And he can call your mother and your father and your grandmother, and they've done so. We remember in AWACS. You were too young to remember. I remember, the efforts of the president. He called girlfriends and mothers-in-law. And you know what? And he got his way.
Okay.
Because when the president says, this is to me the most important thing of my presidency, it's very hard on a judgment call to ignore him and not to be responsive.
Okay.
And with all that, look at where the numbers are.
One more question for you. You talk about how in Israel, the left and the right joined together in opposition to this deal. And now the deal is reality. I'm asking you a second time, how bad is it for Israel that the deal is going forward? Is the sky falling, Abe?
Mark, we don't know. We don't know. History teaches us, we know about Iran. We know too much about Iran that makes us skeptical and concerned. But time will tell. And that's why I am very much concerned that we put all the stops in place to discourage the Iranians from cheating. If we can keep them from cheating, this may work out. Mm-hmm. But if we don't and we can't, then this is a disaster. So to call it a disaster now, it's a bad deal. Can it work? Maybe. Can it be disastrous? Maybe. Time will tell.
Okay, that isn't a comforting thought, though.
Listen, Israel is a very strong sovereign state with all kinds of capabilities. History has taught us that when they need to be to defend themselves, they are very, very inventive and capable. Two, the United States of America has not turned against Israel. The president's argument is that this helps Israel. If he's wrong, if he's right, okay, then wonderful. If he's wrong, then America would be standing there with Israel, and the president is saying it now. The president is ready now to reach out and to put in as many safeguards in place to enhance the possibility that it will be a success.
Okay.
So I'm an optimist.
Yes.
It's not a moment of calamity.
Yes.
This is not a moment of tragedy. So you know what? And especially before Rosh Hashanah.
Yes.
You know what? Israel is strong. America continues to be its ally. America continues to be strong. The president has committed, I will not permit Iran to have nuclear weapons. He said it before. He said it now. He may be right. He may be wrong. But if he's wrong, then you have Israel's strength and you have America as an ally who will stand by it.
It is always wonderful to talk to you, Abe Foxman. You're going nowhere. You may now be the National Director Emeritus, but you are still one of the most important voices leading American and world Jewry. I am honored to call you a friend. When you get back to America after Yom Kippur, we'll sit together in studio. But thank you. Kol tuva hatzlacha and lishana tova u'mituka.
I need to introduce you to my successor.
Yes.
So you get to know him
Yes.
and appreciate him. And so, the next time the two of us will come there.
That's wonderful.
Mark,
Abe,
Shana Tova,
Shana
Agud Gesund Yahr, and Chol Tuv.
Thank you so much, Abe. You be well. The thoughts of Abe Foxman, National Director Emeritus of the ADL, and you hear his perspective. And he's trying to walk a political line, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. He is an optimist. And I think in many ways he says now what American Jewry needs to embrace. We must now try to make this deal. We must try to improve it as best as we possibly can. You heard Abe really echo the thoughts of Dennis Ross, that Israel should be given the mountain buster bombs and the ability to deliver that bomb, and for America to make it clear that Israel is its first and most important ally in the entire region. Those are his thoughts, of course, and we will continue to bring you more as the weeks move on. My thanks, as always, to Sloan Copeland, our director, the associate producer of JBS, Dara Golub, our production coordinator, Serge Goldberg, and to our producer of this edition of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.